Good morning. Oh, just hang tight. We have a few board members that are joining right now. They just let me know. So just hang tight.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I apologize for being a little behind. I'm just not in my regular setup, so I just ran into some technical issues. I hope everyone had a nice weekend.
It's a little rainy, but good.
Good. Okay. Am I seeing only me as the only board member so far?
Right now, Mr. Walker just let me know he's joining. He's also getting in front of the computer. He'll be joining shortly. And I'm
Okay.
checking and I know Phil is out of the country.
Okay.
Chairman Rigger, I mean.
And Christina, did you see my email?
I did. Did you see my response?
You know what? I didn't, because I kept seeing stuff I thought from you. I made the mistake of combining all my emails together, all my email
Oh.
addresses, and I don't think that was a good idea.
No, I've
Okay.
done that before, and you're like,
Yeah, I was supposed to be more efficient, and I don't think it's worked out. I'll just say it that way. Because I thought I saw something from you, and then when I clicked, then it was like, no, this is the one I've already seen. So, but all right.
okay, I just am messaging a few other board members.
Okay.
Yeah.
I figure we just wait for board member Walker.
Yeah.
Since he's connecting, and then we'll go from there. I'm
Okay.
gonna see if I can turn on my camera there. There we go.
Mhm.
And you know what, Christina, I just did look it up because I looked it up on my other computer, the one
Oh.
that's not together, and I could quickly find it. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. And I'll just say to Christina, when I say the 8 items, I think you know what I'm talking about, right? When I say like the 8 piece, or I think we were calling it 8.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And yes, most of it of course, gone. Yeah, there's some that was vetted to the other committee, and so yes, and the rest here.
Yeah, and the only reason I'm saying that is just because of I'm sure, it may be brought up today, and we
Mhm.
talked about last time giving another month. So
Yeah.
okay.
All right. Real Tyrone too.
Yeah, let me just. In a moment, if we go another minute without Tyrone, I actually may ask Deputy Superintendent Foster to just do the financial results update and just switch things around. Okay. If
Okay.
we, because I, appreciate everyone's time. And again, I apologize for my own tardiness, but I don't understand it too longer. All right, so why don't we go ahead and we go ahead and start, and we'll start there. So, and as a reminder, if everybody could just mute their phones if in their microphones if you are not speaking, I appreciate it. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Kim Oliver, and I am chair of the Finance and Audit Committee for Hartford Public Schools Board of Education. Today, we are having our committee meeting. We have some additional board members who are going to be joining me shortly. But until that time, we're going to go ahead and start, and we are going to still stick to the agenda that has already been posted per Connecticut State law and regulations. However, I'm going to ask that Deputy Superintendent Foster start us off with our updates and reports first. So with that, if we can go to agenda item 2.01, financial results update through August 2023, Deputy Superintendent.
Good morning, thank you. The report that we sent out to you on September 28th, you can see on the screen, reflects the first 2 months of the current fiscal year, so through the end of August. And the rough summary version is that we have expended about 17.3 million, 10.7 of which is general fund in the first 2 months of the year. That's fairly consistent with last fiscal year, where we spent 17 million in the first 2 months. And the first 2 months of the year are always a little lower because our 10-month employees aren't back until September. And so that's why it starts a little slow. Modest increases in encumbrances around particularly software and instructional supplies. Again, not to be expected with the start of the fiscal year, seeing supply purchases as well as software. So that is really the overview, and certainly attached to the summary memo is the all funds, the general funds, and the special fund expenditures through August 31st. If we go then to the ESSER, or the COVID relief grant spending summary. So we spent or encumbered about 3.3 million in July and August. And really what I want to highlight here is we have now, since the initial award of our COVID relief grant spending, we have spent almost 100 million, 97.2 million of the COVID relief. That's 62.9% of the total. And I think the most important thing to highlight here is the ESSER 2 grant had to be spent by September 30th of 23. And actually, as of the end of August, we were down to 87,000. And I think actually, as you can see in the memo, by the 26th of September, we were down to about 18,000 left. So, and that will be spent. So I think important to highlight, by the end of August, we were at 99.8% of the ESSER 2 grant spent. So we've done credit to the finance team and credit to those who had money budgeted in ESSER, spending it essentially. And so that's good news. And that leaves us with 57 million in the ARP ESSER 3 funding that has to be spent by September 30th, 2024. And as we've talked about previously, our current spending plan has us spending the full amount of the ARP ESSER 3 by actually June 30th of 2024. And I know we have an agenda item later this morning. We'll go into a little more detail on the ESSER spending plan. And so that concludes the financial report through the second period of the fiscal year, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. And I do believe Board Member Walker has joined as well. Good morning, Mr. Walker. Good to see you.
Yeah. Good morning, Chair. Yeah, apologies.
No worries.
Beyond everything else, I got super slow. Whatever Wi-Fi here at my house. But since I'm talking, if I can raise one question, I guess, to Mrs. Foster.
Yes.
So so you're just saying there's a plan for the ESSER spend. I mean, you're pretty confident that the money is planfully encumbered, and that you're confident that all the money will be spent by the due date?
Yes, I am confident. I mean, we have an agenda item, and I'll go into more detail, but we have some strategies as well for monitoring it over the course of this year. And so if there are funds that we had allocated for a certain purpose that don't get used, we have a plan for both identifying that and then repurposing those funds over the course of the year, should that happen.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and So what I was going to say is, because I think that's agenda item 2.02. Is that correct? Deputy Superintendent Foster?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, so Mr. Walker, just let you know, went out of order because I wanted at least another board member on with me when we did the contracts. So it feels like this is a natural place to go to the ESSER spending, but I'm going to actually put a pin in that now that you're here with me, so that we could, and I also see Ms. Escribano here as well. So good morning to you as well, so that we could go ahead and do the contract. So we'll come back to your question, if you don't mind, Mr. Walker.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, great. If there's no other questions on the financial update, then I would like us to move back to agenda item 1.01, Cotman Playground. I don't know whose it is to take on. Whoever could go ahead and lead. Thank you.
We have Dr. Inga on the call.
Yes, good morning.
Just let me know when to move forward on the slides.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. The Cotman Playground is a playground, a playscape that's being recommended for being built at Capital Prep, which is a pre-K-12 school. And for years, their pre-K-5 students have not had the opportunity of a playscape. And so they make do with balls from the gym that they have, and we wanted to move forward at this time. The parents are really eager for a playscape being built on the school grounds. Right now, as I said before, what they have are things from the gym that they borrow to bring out to the kids but for pre-K, particularly pre-K2 kids, they need more of a stimulation to build that sense of community, playing with other students, and Coleman provides this. Next slide, please. Next slide. I'm not sure where that slide comes from. The total budget for this project is $181,379.73. That includes the any site work that needs to be done, transportation, the installation, and the funding source, or the ESSER, SEIG, the grant funds. Next slide, please. This is a blow up of how we envision the playscape to look. There is also a playscape at the Anna Grace Academy. It's a considerably larger than the one that Capital Prep is going to build, only because of one, the funding, and two, the size of the lot that the playscape would go on. But this gives you a depiction of what's going to be at the site right now. The swing set, There's a little jungle gym house, and I don't know if you could see the little round play facility for kids to jump in and off on. Next slide, please. So the objective, again, is to create an inclusive space for children to engage in, to help develop their social, emotional well-being and their ability to collaborate with others. The contract is for 1 year because once the playscape is built, it's on grounds, no additional funds will be expended. And the funding source, again, is a SEG grant. Next slide, please.
That is the last slide.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Christina. Are there any questions that I could answer?
Any of my board members, do you have questions?
Yes, Mr. Walker,
Yep, Mr. Walker, go ahead.
Mr. Chair. Yes. Basinga, I don't know if the comments to you, it's I like the project, but I want to comment on the structure of the presentation. Sitting on the finance committee, I see some numbers here. I don't see a lot of financial questions like asked and answered. I don't have a sense of is the cost of this comparable to other similar playgrounds? I'm not sure how we arrived at the numbers. I mean, financially, are they comparable to what other vendors were saying? How do we compare vendors? Like, how am I comparing this cost? I have no way of really saying good cost, bad cost. And so I would just ask, as we move forward, if we're talking to the finance committee, that we really ask and answer these finance type questions. Yeah, that'd be my only comment. And I'm saying it because I'd invite, conversation with the responsible leadership team member outside of this meeting to really kind of nail down what it is that needs to go into a finance committee presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Actually, that was my question, so I'll ask the question directly. For the contract amount of $181,379.73, can someone speak to was there a bidding process for this? Did it work? Was there work directly with, and I apologize if I have the name wrong because I've seen it now multiple ways, but if it's Coleman or Cotman, but was it a partnership with them? Have they done, I think you said they might have done a playground with us before. Can someone just give a little bit more context there? I appreciate it.
Okay. Yes, thank you for that question. Yes, they've done Colt Park. They've done several playscapes around the city and around the state. They've done 30. And they also did the playscape at Colt Park.
Okay.
Mr. Walker, you have another
Roxanne.
question?
Yeah, thank you. So I can't remember. Ms. Singer, are you a doctor? I want to make sure
I'm a doctor, but I'm not the real doctor. I'm not the kind that can help you if you're in trouble physically.
I understand, but I want to call you Dr. Inga if you are.
Okay.
And so
thank you.
with that being said, my feedback is that's what needs to be shown here. Because I often feel like in my spirit that you have that information. Like if I was sitting in your chair, I'd want to see the resume of this person. What's your body of work? And in doing this work, how often have you come in at budget or under budget? What value did you deliver for cost? And maybe what were what was the ranking and response? Often that they have, feedback from other clients and entities. These will all be things that would really validate, here's why we're using Cotman, here's why they were better than the other folks that came to us. And it'd be great to know too that, well, I'll leave it there. The other, so if a question is, was there, any vetting to see that their cost estimates were comparable to others? Like, were they the best value? Were they the cheapest? how do they compare to the other folks that submitted a bid?
Okay, so we'll make sure we get you that information.
All right, and do you know it now?
There was there was a look at other companies that were considerably more. One estimate was $199, 179.
Yes,
I'm sorry, 199,000.
sure. I
And then,
understood.
of course, the Anna Grace Playscape was considerably more because of the magnitude.
Hmm.
But to compare this one for capital prep, it was considerably less. The quote that I have is 199, 179, but I can get you additional information on that.
Okay, thank you.
Any
Thank
other questions? Okay. Oh, I'm unmuting myself, sorry. Hearing none, thank you very much for the presentation. I don't have any other questions. We can move on to our next contract. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now going on to agenda item 1.02 is acceptance of funds and contracts approval for school-based health alliance grant to Cure MD. I'm turning it over to who is going to present.
That would be Dr. McGilpin, and you're on mute, so make sure you take on. And we also have our Director of Health Services, Deb Kamaidi. I know she's having technical difficulties trying to unmute. I'm trying to, Deb, if you can hear me, for some reason, I can't even ask you to unmute. I will keep trying. Okay.
Okay.
And all yours.
Yeah, I'm having technical problems too. I'm doing the computer and my phone combined because one, the voice works, the other one, the video works. So hopefully things will go well. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very excited about this. The Hartford Public Schools has had medical and dental clinics located in 17 different schools throughout the district. For the past 25 years, we've had to use something called Access database to document our visits. We bill Medicaid from that database. That's where we make it all the money come out. Using software that we contract with yearly that converts our files into files that Medicaid will accept. At this point in time, the database is outdated. It's very, very, very inefficient. It requires a high specialized skill set to work with. It takes people weeks, I think, in reality, to be able to use the system. CureMD, which is a EHR system, will meet our needs of all our providers. And this is a great thing because it's both dental and medical. Okay, and that's a huge plus there. We were awarded a grant funding from the School-Based Health Alliance to purchase the EHR for the district that our medical, dental, and mental health providers will be able to use. They will enter their visits directly into the system. The EHR will determine Medicaid eligibility immediately, and claims will be submitted in a very timely manner, which does not happen today. Cure MD interfaces with PowerSchool, so our students will already be populated into the EHR. That's critical. It also interfaces with CTWiz, which is a statewide immunization database, so that our students' vaccines will be populated in the EHR, eliminating the need for our providers to spend time searching for that information in medical records. It also makes it easier for them to enter immunizations that we indeed give. We will administer vaccines to students, enter the data into AHR, and it will automatically enter into CTWiz, eliminating the need for our providers to do double entry. I really think that we need to go to the 21st century. I will tell you, I am very old school, and I would love to still be on paper in the world of medicine. but that doesn't happen. Okay, I was on a recent group discussion from other school-based health clinics throughout the country, and we were essentially the only one in that discussion that was not on electronic medical records. Of note, the City of Hartford Health and Services is now under contract with CureMD. I think that I think it really provides a whole scope of things that we can use. Some things to take out of it. We need to replace our data system. It's going to crash, and if it crashes, we cannot present the data to the state that they require, the reports and everything else. I think also it's an EHR that really provides our need. I'm not sure what happened there.
Dr. McGilpin.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you just fine. You're just
Actually,
getting,
It's
you're-
an echo.
you're getting feedback, because there's some of the source that is hearing you speak.
Okay, can you hear it okay now?
I'm okay with the feedback. I'd want you to proceed.
Is it, but before Mr.
How
Walker,
is it? Is this better now?
no, we still hear an echo. We have to make sure that, it can be heard
Well, I
clearly
think I'm gonna
over
turn
the
my
YouTube
video
or
off
public
and see if
meeting.
that will help.
Chair, I think Mr. Sugarman's comments in the chat space is what I was thinking too. I just didn't want to micromanage it, but if you read Mr. Sugarman's comments, I think it's relevant.
Okay, is this better now?
Yes, it is. You can proceed. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry for that. I'm not sure what happened. As I was saying, CureMD is the only EH system we have that we've seen that will meet our needs both for medical, dental, and mental health. As I mentioned, it will make submission to Medicaid almost automatic, and we'll do it in a very timely basis, which has not been happening now. As I mentioned, Power School and CT Wiz are all there, eliminating double work. The total amount of the one-time cost of implementation and setup is about $123,233. We awarded a grant for $107,473. The difference between the two is about $15,760, and which were paid out of the health services Medicaid reimbursement. Moving in the forward, because you want to know what the cost is going to be out there in the future. It's a yearly cost of CureMD is going to be about $94,560. I think there may be some savings along the way with this program, as I think we can be much more cost efficient. Certainly, data reporting and the amount of time needed to generate reports that we have to give to the state from immunizations, everything else, much easier to do and much more efficient. And I think in reality, quality assurance is something we really can make a big deal with it, because we can look at the medical records. It can be seen by other people, even from a remote point of view, if you're not actually seeing the patient and review their records there. And I think it puts us into the 21st century, which we're not on now as far as our medical records go. I think as far as cost goes, in reality, when Debbie Comides told me the cost, I was expecting that someplace, having been involved with 3 other systems, I would expect that we were going to come in at $300,000 to $400,000, and to come in at this price is very good price. And it's also, again, it's when the rubber meets the road that matters, but certainly from everything I've done talked to people who've used this particular system and the presentation. I think this is a very good value for the dollar. So I'm open for questions. And Debbie will help me too.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Walker.
Good morning, Dr. McGilpin. The presentation you gave is great, and the reasonings are clear, compelling. I would ask that your ending comments about the best value and the anticipated cost versus the actual cost. I would ask that you find a way to actually visually show that, to go someone go do the comparisons. It's not clear here that we've talked to other potential providers or looked at other solutions, even the cost of doing nothing. So that would have been good to see. And while I totally believe you, I believe that it would help the process to have this in the presentation.
I can tell you that one of the problems is that what this made this system viable is that a lot of the other systems don't do both dental as well as mental health as well as medical. Okay, so it's sometimes you're comparing apples and oranges there, and one may be cheaper this way, but not as well in the other way. And again, I'm not an expert in the dental, but the dental people we had looked at it, they were very happy with this system.
Thank you.
And I think the other aspect, the other is that we sort of got in the gate because the city of Hartford is also on the contract with CureMD, and that's what they're going to go with. So it helped us, I think, maybe a little bit with the cost. I don't know that, but I think it is a very reasonable cost. I can tell you my experience with both Epic, Allscripts, and one other one is that this is significantly cheaper. Epic is the big one all the hospitals use, and we would be in the millions of dollars. Okay, I would not even. They're not going to do it.
Thank you, Dr. McGilpin. Chair, I have a follow-up question.
Okay, go ahead.
This question, I think I'm going to direct towards Mr. Foster. Mr. Foster, as I'm seeing this presentation, what I think would be really helpful is, as a district, we don't seem to have somebody quarterbacking kind of our IT infrastructure kind of strategy and tool implementation. I'm asking you to maybe put together or get folks to put together kind of a more comprehensive kind of dialogue education for us to say, here's what we are overall. We probably this isn't the only system that's probably dated. I can totally see from this presentation that this totally has to be done and probably needs to be done this year. But it'd be great to have somebody who can present, here's our landscape. We got 8 things we think of the next 2 or 3 years we need to replace. Here's our overall timeline. And so as we see things coming forward, we kind of understand where it's fitting, when it's coming. And then like with Dr. McGilpin, there'd be some partner from more the IT side that would kind of shed light on some of the other elements that Dr. McGilpin probably can't speak expertly about. But I do believe everything he's saying about the value of the tool and the function that he is providing. So I just wanted to give you that as kind of a future action as we talk about these IT tools and infrastructure replacement.
Sure. And I'm happy to, so what I hear you asking for is really what's the IT systems roadmap? And, happy to work with Chief Davis Googe as well as our partners at MHIS to kind of lay that out for you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, Chair, not on my end. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Escribano. That being said, I had no questions. So thank you very much, Dr. McGilpin. For the presentation, we're going to move on to our next contract. Our next contract is, I believe, Adams and Knight. Now handing this over to whoever is going to present.
Good morning. This is Chief Davis Googe. This contract is aligned with Hartford Public Schools' commitment to executing one clear and consistent marketing strategy that aligns with our brand, mission, and vision. So this was a cross-departmental contract between the Office of School Choice and Enrollment, the Office of Talent Management, as well as the Office of Family Engagement and Community Partnerships. It was also done in collaboration with the Communications and Marketing Department. We actually, through the city's RFP process, there were 7 proposals that were reviewed. Through that process, the selection committee collectively agreed that Adams and Knight demonstrated the capacity to develop and execute for us. What you have here is the 23-24 strategy overview for all 3 departments and including our marketing and recruiting department. So what you have here is that Adams and Knight will support the 3 departments, and Connecticut Public will support the communications and marketing department. The amount of the contract is $300,000 approximately. What is important to note here that about half of that amount is attributed to funding coming from the Magnet State Operating Grant. The general budget for the Office of Enrollment and School Choice will also supplement. OTM is estimating somewhere between 70 and 75,000, and then the remaining being with the Office of Family and Community Partnerships. The goal generally is to build awareness of HPS, obviously our school options, as well as recruiting students and staff, and also to support family engagement. Next slide. So again, I think I covered it. Maybe I didn't speak much about the deliverables. It is to create development of all our media assets, video production, photography, graphic design, digital assets, TV and radio production, and it will also include print. We know that some of our families have limited access to technology, so we want to make sure that through our awareness part of the campaign that we are providing those things in hard copy. So again, this contract won't exceed $300,000. I would also want to share with you all that we know that there is a need for us to demonstrate our success in our outcomes and our metrics. And so at the initial part of the planning, we will come back through committees and come back with the metrics that will guide this campaign. And in response to a request that was made during the Family and Community Partnerships Committee, we did get some metric information back from Adams and Knight, who, as we know, worked on the OTM campaign in the previous school year. I believe that was shared with all the board members. Any questions on this contract?
Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks, Chief Davis Googe. I feel like on one hand, I really appreciate all you do. It feels like of late, though, I've been like questioning and poking. And I appreciate though the response you did to the previous work by Adams and Knight and that grading and whatnot. As it relates to this, I also appreciate that you're coming back with the targets and the goals and the objectives. I look forward to that. What I want to ask here, taking one step back, like I'm going to do the comparison with OTM when Adams and I did a whole lot of work with OTM, like beyond all the deliverables of that project, the big value they were driving was, let's say, the number of teachers recruited in the district. That was kind of thing we really cared about at the end of all of the efforts. So I am wondering here in the work with Resco, like, what's kind of the goal? Are we trying to get more students or increase the flow of students into the Harvard magnet schools or Harvard choice schools, or reduce our flow of students leaving our schools? How do we look at the overall impact, that value impact?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I will say is that it's two things. One is like just making sure, right? It's a very competitive landscape, right? We have the Resco, who has 4 partners working to ensure that Harvard residents are in integrated settings, right? And so that work is very competitive. Unfortunately, the number of integrated settings are limited. So certainly bringing awareness to our Harvard Magnet School portfolio is very important. But in general, our goal is to make sure that our residents and the families in the greater Hartford region understand which schools fall under Hartford Public Schools. So there's the awareness piece, and then there's like the media campaign, which we hope will drive families to our application process, whether it's the magnet process or the district process, right? We have a commitment to make sure that students entering our district also are aware of the processes and how they engage with Hartford Public Schools. So I will say yes. And like one is that we certainly want to make sure that everyone is aware of our schools and our pathways. And the other piece, to the extent possible, drive students to Hartford Public Schools. But keeping in mind that there is a state portfolio that is also engaging as well.
Yeah,
I
Mr.
appreciate
Costa, go ahead.
appreciate your response. Thank you very much. As one follow-up, and I'm like that, I'm praying I'm not giving you like unfunded mandate. I've heard 2 things. You talked about improved awareness among district residents and families. Is there a way in this project, or as part of this project, can we get some kind of baseline where we kind of can measure people's awareness and opinion about Harvard Public School choices kind of pre this program, and maybe this time, either next year or mid-year, we come back with like, hey, as a result of this program, people have better awareness or better opinions, or something that can say that we moved the needle. Because even if we don't keep all the students, if you can say that people have a higher opinion of our offerings in schools and have better thoughts and feelings of it, I would call some of that a success too. So I'm just throwing out there, if you can work with our partners to see if we can put together some kind of way to survey it, or put it as part of the district surveying they do already, ask some questions as it relates to this. I'm just putting it out as an ask. So I'm hoping I'm not giving you some kind of unfunded mandate.
No, you're not. I would certainly, and that's great, because what I can do is rely on their expertise, right? Awareness is a difficult thing to kind of manage, but certainly there should be a way, and they're the experts and they should tell us. So when we are in our campaign planning, I'll certainly make that request.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just check in. Ms. Escobar, do you have any questions?
No, Chair, thank you so much.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I can put my camera back on, just wanted to underscore the request that Mr. Walker just made, and actually would like to also expand it to the supports and resources as noted on the objectives. Chief Davis Gooch, if you don't mind. The other thing is, if memory serves, there were reports before on the Adams and Knights contract we had and the impact or what we believe was the impact. If that could also be resent to board members prior to the board meeting, I think that would be helpful as well. I think someone should know, hopefully, Christina, you do know what I'm talking about, but I'm almost positive we had a committee meeting where some of those numbers were shared. But thank you very much, Chief Davis Gooch. Appreciate it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, so we are now, that was our last contract to discuss today. We're going to move back into updates and reports and now move to item 2.02, I believe is Deputy Superintendent Foster. Take it away.
Thank you. Good morning again. So I know we shared with you in early August a high-level ESSER spending plan for 23-24, and there was a request, I think, both at that time and also at our September Finance Committee meeting to see some additional detail. And so we did send this to you in advance, but I'm going to walk through a few slides, but we also have some detail behind the slides that we can talk about as well. So we can go ahead and jump to the next slide. So the first two slides are really just a reminder of both two things. This first slide is a reminder of what were the Connecticut State Department of Education's authorized uses for the ARP ESSER funds. And so you can see those on the left side and sort of the parameters on the right side, but clearly learning acceleration, connection between school and family, social, emotional, and mental health, strategic use of technology, building safe and healthy schools, right? So these are the kinds of things that CSDE outlined as appropriate uses of the ARP ESSER funds. And if we go to the next slide, this should be very familiar. This is the must wins that we defined in the Hartford Public Schools, consistent with the CSDE parameters around how we would prioritize the use of our COVID relief funding. And so you see we have four big buckets around learning time and support, increasing support for teachers and school leaders, connecting students to an adult and expanding wellness opportunities, and then creating a sustainable teacher pipeline. I'll also highlight on the bottom here the equity innovation grants. So we made a conscious choice as a district to provide some funding to schools. Right, schools are closest to the needs of our students, and giving them the opportunity to think about within their school context what supports would be most meaningful and supportive for their student and broader community. And so if we go into the numbers on the next slide, this is a little bit of a recap of what I went over in my financial report, but you can see again we've essentially expended the ESSER 2, and as of now we have expended it. It had to be extended by September 30. 2023, and it has been fully expended. And so what remains is the ARP ESSER 3. And you can see as of August 31st, we had about 57 million remaining in the ARP ESSER 3. And one of the specific requests from the board was to see the 23-24 spending plan in relationship to the remaining funds, right? And I'll be very upfront and say that's very much a moving target, right? Because we are spending these funds every day, every pay period, right? There are positions funded through this money. So the money is being expended literally daily. And so kind of lining up this is what's left with the spending plan involves some, making sure we're really clear about what's spent and what hasn't been spent yet. And so if we go to the next slide, before I get to the detail on the spending, just, I had alluded to earlier the fact that we have a plan to ensure that the ARP ESSER 3 funding is fully expended by the deadline of September 30th, 2024. And so that involves both strategies to ensure the spend down and then being mindful of variables that can impact the amount. And so I've got these organized across the categories of purchasing, budgeting, sweeps, and priorities. So obviously our foremost among our strategies to ensure spend down is just monitoring. So paying attention month to month to what's been expended. That's part of how the finance department tracking ESSER 2, how we ensured those funds were spent down by the deadline. We have shared previously about sweep deadlines. Positions that were budgeted to be funded by ESSER that haven't been filled by October 15th, we're going to recover that funding. We're going to pull that funding back. And then same thing by December 15th. If there are items that are in this ESSER spending plan that we have not encumbered by December 15th, and we'll look at these one by one, but the idea is if we said we were going to spend money on something and we haven't encumbered it by December 15th, we need to revisit that, pull it back so we can make sure we are able to repurpose it and expend it by the deadline. And that goes to that third column of priorities where we will reallocate swept funds. So we are tracking what are unbudgeted priorities that have surfaced since we completed the ESSER spending plan, so that we have things we can pivot to should we not spend everything that we had allocated in the spending plan. And then the things that impact the amount spent, certainly changes due to procurement processes. So that's, if we're doing an RFP, right? The amount that comes back from an RFP may be different than what we budgeted. Contract approvals, those things influence what gets spent. Per the sweeps, right? The number of ARP ESSER funded positions that remain vacant will impact the amount we spend. And again, shifts in priorities. And we have had some situations where things we thought we were going to pay for with ARP ESSER funding, another funding source has come along to pay for that. And so that's another variable that can change the amount we spend on a given priority. So that's the overview of our strategies to ensure spend down. If we go to the next slide, this is the summary of our ESSER spending plan for 23-24. So the blue bar is our positions. And then the red bar is funding for everything other than positions. And just to be clear about that, that red, it does include some funding that goes to people in the form of extra duty pay and things like that. So the blue is literally just salary and fringe for positions funded on ESSER. And then the red is everything else. So going into a little more detail, first with positions. Sorry, Christine. Yeah, there we go. So this shows you the positions by must win. And you can see there are positions funded that schools have made choices with their SEIG funding to fund some positions. You see we have positions across each of the must wins, as well as safety, health, technology, and SEIG. And what I'm showing you here is the budget for 23-24, what's been expended or encumbered. Now that's very low. And again, that's because this is through the end of August. And so most of the 10-month positions hadn't started hitting the funding at the time that this report is as of, and you see the remaining budgeted in the right-hand column. On the next slide, you have the same analysis, or same breakdown, I should say, for expenditures other than positions. So again, by must win, the budget, and then the expended or encumbered thus far, as well as the remaining budget. And then the next slide, I think it gives you this. So this was, again, the board request to try to tie these out. And so what you're seeing here is the summary of positions and expenditures other than positions, budgeted, how much is expended or encumbered, what is remaining as of the end of August. And I'm matching that what is remaining as of the end of August with what we have left as of the end of August in the ESSER 3 ARP funds, that 57,322,000 number from the earlier slide. So you can see that leaves, it's not a perfect match. It leaves about 634,000 in remaining ESSER 3 ARP funds that is not accounted for, I would say, in our ESSER 3 ARP spending plan. So the next slide just actually takes you to links, because the other request from the board was for greater detail at a finer level of detail than the must wins. And Christina, do you want to pull up the report, or the detail report?
This is the last slide, right? Because I can't click, keep clicking.
Yeah, no, this is the last slide.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to move into the detail report, which is the separate doc.
Oh, actually, hold on. Let me go. Yeah, that's great. Sorry, it's really small, huh? So the first page in this report is actually what I already walked through. This was in the slides. So it's the summary by must win of the positions and the expenditure other than positions, again, budgeted, expended, or encumbered, remaining. So Christina, if you scroll to the top of the next page, and I won't go line by line through this, I just want to explain what you have here in the event there are questions. So this is the expenditures other than positions. So this is where we provided detail deeper than the must wins. And so you can see, right within the must win number one, you see things like our credit diploma program, purchase of curriculum, alternative education, extended learning, the HOPE program, PK expansion. And again, you see that budgeted, expended, remaining across each of those programs.
And so we have this report for expenditures other than positions, and I think page 4 of this report gives you the same kind of breakdown sort of by program for each of the for positions that are funded with ESSER 3 and ARP. And so, yeah, if you want to scroll, we could just show the positions, which I think is page 4. And so same thing, right? So this is programmatically within each of the must-wins positions that are funded in the ESSER 3 ARP spending plan for 23-24. That is an overview, and again, an explanation, I guess, of the additional detail we've provided. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent. All right, I don't see a hand from, okay, I do see. I was expecting, sorry, I should turn my camera on, apologize for that.
No,
I was
this is
expecting
fine.
a hand from you, Mr. Walker. That's why I was giving some moments. Mr. Walker.
No, thank you. I dare not be predictable, Madam Chair, but comment, Ms. Foster, this is terrific work. I was not in the camp of folks who were biting my fingernails like, oh my goodness, we can't figure out how to spend money. I do have a question or comment. With this level of detail, is it possible for us to maybe understand the constituency, or like those little detailed programs, like kind of what they are and like who's their constituency? I'm not asking for more detail. I'm just saying maybe the storyline of how they all got there. The only reason I'm asking, and here's kind of my ask, right? Because there is some money probably that hasn't been encumbered at this point. So I thought like a little treat would be creating kind of a mini version of a Hartford Decides for either community or district staff, where maybe they could also have a forum for their ideas of, if this is our last good bite of the apple, is there some wonderful thing that we've not thought about, or some great thing that would be terrific to have? Where, if folks aren't familiar with the Hartford Decides type of thing, is a program in which citizens are asked to kind of submit survey style, their ideas, and then from that, then same-sex citizens or others then kind of vote on all the ideas that they are submitted, and then they kind of rank them, and then obviously from this quote unquote mini democracy, initiatives within a certain budget range are then identified that could be possibly funded, right? So I'm just tossing it out there, Mr. Foster, if perchance, like let's say we have $1 million or a couple $1 million unencumbered, that plausibly teachers, staff, or community folks could maybe identify their ideas of how they could see the money being best spent. Do you got any thoughts about that? At least as an idea or a concept, is that workable or doable?
Certainly, I'm open to the suggestion. What I would say on that right now is, as of now, given the report I just shared, right, there's about 630,000 roughly that I'm not showing you as allocated. But as I said earlier, as the year progresses, we may identify additional funding that doesn't get spent in the way that we thought it was going to be spent, and that is something we could consider. I think a couple of things I would say. Obviously, one is, the work that went into developing the must-wins certainly involved deep engagement with the community. That was before my time, but I'm aware of the work that went in to sort of create those must-wins. And the other thing I would say is, obviously, we have to be very mindful that anything we do use it'd have to be a limited scope, in the sense that it has to meet the CSDE requirements about how we spend the money. But I think within that scope, is it something we could consider? Should we identify some additional funding? Probably. The other thing I would say is, as you scan the list of things, my guess is, I hope many folks will see things that they value deeply when they look at the ways we're spending this funding already. I know there was discussion last month about investments in the arts, for example. And one of the things this spending plan includes is almost 1.2 million in unified arts equipment and supplies. And so I say that as an example, like hopefully many of the things that folks in our community would identify through a Hartford Decides process are probably already reflected here in some way. But I take the recommendation seriously. And so as we identify more funding that's not encumbered, I think we're happy to keep having that conversation about what that could look like.
Well, I would say what you suggest is what would be helpful to me, because I think as I was thinking my idea, an input to it has to be to understand where the current money is going. Because if people can kind of see that, oh, that idea is already captured here. If there's a way out of the details to kind of have a way of fleshing it out, so even for myself, be able to say, oh, that idea, you know what? It's already covered because this line item has these three things. And the amount of money you have left over is about the right amount of money for kind of a Hartford Decides type of concept. I wouldn't want to have the community try to figure out how to spend $50 million because you wouldn't get there. There'd be no way. And you'd undermine, like you say, your CSDE kind of approach. So maybe outside this meeting, it's something to kick around, maybe just through a conversation to see if it makes any sense. And maybe I can get a little bit more education as to what those detailed line items are, just so I can be more informed as community folks or others are saying, hey, because whenever I talk to teachers or people, there's always like, why don't they spend money on X? And it'd be great to say, well, they already are. It just hasn't technically happened, but they already have planned to spend on A, B, or C. But that's my only comments. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, one follow-up I would just offer is feel free to reach out to me if there's, we tried as hard as we could to these are obviously short descriptions of the different spending. And so they don't have that detail you're talking about, but we try to use as much as possible, the plain language of like what this thing is. But I'm happy to try to on ones that are, especially ones that are not clear, like what it is, I'm happy to try to provide that additional detail.
I appreciate that. And I'll follow up with you because the report you have is very detailed, and I not want you to put any more effort into this report. It's really good and detailed, and it explains where the money's going.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a couple of comments and questions myself. So one of them is just on the last comment from Mr. Walker. I just also want to acknowledge that there's board members have also mentioned some other things as well. For example, community schools. We said there was a step down plan based on sustainability, also based on where we thought money was. And we know that while it had been increased as part of the plan, that it definitely still was a step down. So things of that nature, I would just ask if the staff could take another look at that. The other thing for me, this is a very helpful report. I'm just wondering if there's a way to identify, and perhaps it's everything that's not connected to salaries, but identify like a contract is coming for this line. Like we need to do contract approval for the Board of Ed. I just think that would be helpful for it to be something to prepare us as Board of Ed members. And the question I do have, so I guess those are two comments, is regarding salaries. I know that USDOE came out and stated there was going to be an extension on ESSER dollars, but that extension is also only for the delivery of vendor services. If it's for salaries, my understanding is the last date for that is September 2024. So that said, and when we look at the numbers, I want to say it was something like, was it 4 million or so? I can't get to it offhand, but some number of a handful of millions of dollars that's still connected to salaries. Could you just speak to what the plan is at that point? Because some of and I was trying to look at it quickly, I apologize, just look like they're roles that would be helpful for the long term. Like it's not just, just immediate helpful, kind of a program that has an end date kind of staff member. Could you just talk a little bit about that? And if you need more time to talk about that and we need to put that for next month, that's okay too. Just wanted to ask about it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, we probably do need to talk about it more and in more detail, but I can give a sort of the high level for now. And you're 100% right. So the federal government has extended the deadline to pay the bills, if you will, associated with encumbrances, but for salaries, Your last day is September 30th of 2024 in terms of paying salaries using the ESSER and the ARP funding. And so you're right. So we have more than 200 positions that are funded for this fiscal year for 23-24 on ESSER 3 and ARP. And the short answer is that it becomes a really essential part of our 24-25 budget process that I think that we're going to talk about that in a minute because that's our last agenda item for today. But really, to your point, if you look at the positions that are funded, some of them, right, we have additional behavior techs, we have additional social workers, we have a student engagement specialist, right? We have positions, to your point, that feel like, there's a reason we added those positions. Now, I will say those positions are over and above what we provide to schools through the equity-based starter budget. So that was, again, as part of learning acceleration and deepening wellness supports with the ESSER funding, we added positions, but that's going to result in some really challenging conversations and development of the 24-25 budget around what can we afford to keep relative to those positions, because again, they were over and above our kind of allocation, but there's a reason we added those positions, right? There was a felt need. And so I guess my answer is that really, as we work together to create a 24-25 budget, that 24-25 budget will enshrine our decisions about what work that was funded through ESSER needs to continue.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Walker, see your hands up.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to add to the comments. I did not bring that up, but you talked about there being 200 positions funded. I just want to ask that we incorporate our understanding now of district staff retention and departures as part of this discussion, because I think we indicated this year that we're getting better understanding there. And I'm saying that because at 200 positions, I was feeling like we have high enough attrition in the district currently that attrition itself may take care of a lot of the need to keep positions. So I just want to at least have that in the conversation, because like this past year, Dr. Curtis reported the attrition of 180 staff in the district. And I think that was just teaching. It may not have included staffs in other non-teaching areas. So just throwing that out there to make sure that's part of the conversation as we talk about sustainability of these staff positions moving in the future.
Yes, thank you. I mean, certainly, I mean, it will be a priority, right? If people whose positions that are funded by ESSER, for individual people whose positions are funded by ESSER 3 or ARP, what are the opportunities to move them into a position that's funded by the GB that becomes vacant through attrition and things like that, I think would be a priority for us to keep people.
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't think we have any other questions on that. And I think we have one more item. Item 2.03, the 2023-24 budget timeline. And I think Deputy Superintendent Foster, is still you.
Yes, thank you again. And so this is, full disclosure, my first version of this was a slide deck, and we thought, you know what, let's bring you guys a draft of a one-pager that provides a high-level overview of what this budget process is going to look like. And so I want to be really clear that this is a draft, right? And so I'm here this morning looking for your thoughts and feedback, both on the timeline itself, right, the details of the process, as well as, just wanting to be really clear with our community about what this budget process is, what a budget's designed to do. And so I'm going to walk through it quickly, but I want to make sure we preserve time for questions and feedback from the board. You can see at the top just a high level, right? What is our budget and what's our path to a budget? And, highlighting on the right-hand side, the constraints. We just talked about the biggest constraint we have going into building our 24-25 budget, and that is the expiration of COVID relief, and not necessarily expecting increases in state funding, certainly not expecting increases in state funding that are going to keep pace with the increases in our costs. And you see some of those costs there. One of the things that we are thinking about, and I'll talk about this more in a second, in terms of the 24-25 budget process, is how do we, meaningfully share with our community the reality. And so one of the realities that is not always well understood is the degree of fixed costs we have, right? When I think we think about our special education costs are really driven by what's in each individual student's IEP. And then we have tuition, which is, we influence but isn't controlled by us, right? That's a function of families making choices, transportation, fringe benefits. And so we're anticipating increased costs at the same time that we're anticipating decreased revenue when you think about the sunsetting of the COVID relief funding. So that's the context. And then if you go to the middle of the visual, right, there's the components of our budget process. And that's really what is the timeline is designed to articulate is when are we doing these different parts of our process? Obviously, Board of Education input and approval, robust community engagement, school governance involvement and input, the finance department work, school and district leadership collaboration. And then on the right, one of the things we're thinking hard about because of the challenges we're facing in developing this 24-25 budget is, again, what are the resources we can put in the hands of our internal and external stakeholders to build both understanding and also to build kind of engagement and input. And so certainly just educational materials to try to better understand the expiration of ESSER and what that means, as well as understanding things like fixed costs that I just described, right? If you take away our fixed costs, then actually the levers you have to balance our budget, it doesn't amount to the full amount of our budget, right? Sharing information about enrollment projections and what that translates to in terms of the equity-based allocations to each school. And then lastly, something, time is short, right? This process is starting, when you look at the timeline, this process is starting now. But we would like to put some simulation tools in the hands of internal and external stakeholders where folks can actually see what some of the trade-offs are, right? Because, typically in a budget engagement process, right, everybody's got priorities and you can collect everyone's priorities, but there's not really a version of building this budget that is going to be, we get to add things without taking something else away. And so we want to give folks the opportunity to, think a little in terms of giving us feedback, think a little bit about trade-offs, right? So somebody can say, I would like to see an increase in spending for a particular purpose. But we would want them to think about, well, what would they be willing to give up to make that increase happen? And so trying to put some tools in the hands of our community for that purpose. And then lastly, at the bottom of the visual is a proposed timeline. Again, this is draft and feedback is welcome. And so you see different types of engagement, right? So BOE engagement, the finance committee engagement, principal and school engagement. So we're prioritizing having at least 3 meetings with every school and department this budget cycle. So we're getting deep engagement. Same thing, proposing engagement with union leaders, SGC engagement. You see that starts November 8th, which is, I believe, already a schedule that the Office of Family and Community Engagement is already, or Family and Community Partnerships, they've already put on the calendar, an opportunity to really start that process of both educating and gathering input from SGCs, community forums. We'd like to have multiple, and then you see the development steps proposed. One thing you'll notice here is last year when we first came to the board with the budget timeline, we had the adoption vote happening in the February board meeting. We ended up, as you all know, we decided that we wanted to do some additional engagement and ended up moving the approval to March. We decided, because this is going to be a very complicated budget year, to go ahead and just embrace the March timeline. We don't believe that's going to affect us adversely from a hiring standpoint. And so you see us proposing that the final budget will be voted at the March meeting. So I will stop talking there and happy to take questions or feedback.
Any questions, comments, Mr. Walker?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Foster, 2 levels at the BOE Finance Committee. I've wanted to propose a restructuring of the actual committee agenda. When I've seen the budget workshops and the budget structure, budget seem to be structured around, like, the mission, function, departments. I have thought that what would be helpful from Finance Committee is to take that budget breakdown and use some time, like with October, November, December, throughout the year, to begin to, in addition to you giving some budget, like in addition to the budget, to give some airtime to kind of budget formation. So let's hear from the teaching and learning folks. Let's hear from marketing or FCE, or let's hear from these, let's look at the budget. Let's have some conversation to how we should chunk it out so that we can have some focus time to look at the budget in chunks, get some better understanding in education about the different areas and functions of the district budget. So that when we, to me, when we get to the workshop time, there's not as much ground to cover and there's a little more familiarity. We won't get it all accomplished this year, but I'm throwing that forward to give us something more productive to do here in the monthly meetings so that when we get to the budget time frame, we're just smarter about the budget. And so I'd like you to maybe take that on, look at it, at least propose your take, the Foster perspective of here's how I would chunk out the budget and here's how we can begin to talk about it. And the other thing I would say is the community forums, certainly it needs to start in November. I would add to this, if I were dreaming it up, right, is working through Hartford Next and maybe in the September, October timeframe, get communication out to NRZs so they can begin to promote in their community networks that this forum process is coming up. And so people in community can start to make plans for it, plug into it, and be more aware. Maybe you get the point. So those are two things I would add as it relates to this timeline. A little bit of reformation of the finance committee line, and then a little addition to the community forum with some advanced notifications starting this month and really kicking it off in November and letting it move forward.
Great.
The one thing I would say is I definitely appreciate the comments. One of the things I'm thinking about, Mr. Walker, is the fact that with the number of contracts that may be coming through for the finance committee, to the point you made earlier this year, maybe like a hybrid year of trying to deal with some things. I just think there will be a significant number of contracts that will be facing the committee coming through. And it may be something that it needs to be a workshop and a second workshop or special meeting or something like that for the board. So to your point, when it's time for the full budget to present itself, that all board members are feeling pretty comfortable with the budget that's being basically presented to them. Because I understand your point, and I'm also recognizing that this year is going to be pretty busy with the number of contracts and other things trying to handle as well. The other thing I would ask is, and perhaps Christina, you may know this and you may not know it offhand, but I did think that communication goes out to the NRZs and maybe actually I'm seeing you not your deputy superintendent, perhaps but I just wanted to acknowledge that I thought there was communications, et cetera, that was being shared with NRZs regarding the schools.
Yeah, I would try. I believe yes, and I believe the superintendent has also presented at a few NRZs last year, and I'm sure that will continue.
Okay, I see that Chief Blackburn has come off is on camera, so I don't know if usually she helps to coordinate some of that. So I didn't know if she wanted to respond or just saying hello. If so, did you want to come off mute and say hello? Hello, Chief Blackburn.
Hello, good morning. Definitely been enjoyed the dialogue so far in the Finance Committee. But yes, Chair Oliver, our NRZs do receive the information about forums, workshops. We send that out through the Community Engagement Office, through the city as well. And as you mentioned, the superintendent, as well as myself and other members of our team, we have gone to the NRZs. So definitely can continue to do that, Mr. Walker. But definitely, yes, the NRZs, that's a part of our regular rotation to disseminate information.
And what I'll say is, because Mr. Walker, I'm going to allow you to have the floor in a second. It's just if there's other ideas that you have, maybe offline could also share those ideas too, just in case that that info is still not getting out to everybody. But Mr. Walker, you have the floor.
I have to go on mute. Sorry. So, yeah, Chair Oliver, I appreciate your comments, and I agree with them wholeheartedly. So I'm just going to Plan B, Mr. Foster. I had thought I'd be willing to sacrifice some time if we could come up with a workshop or, a mini retreat type of thing in December. If we strategically pick some early December date, as Chair Oliver said, because we probably won't have the time to do all this breakdown by department between now and then. But I do think an extra session would be helpful, because I think what happened last year, having the first session in January just doesn't give the board enough time to digest, come back with feedback, and not feel like it's a race. So maybe one additional workshop, as suggested by Chair Oliver, could be a meeting in the middle for now. I'm just endorsing and appreciating what Chief Blackburg said. I would just say, just do more of the same. I know the mayor's office has their liaison that goes to NRZ meetings, and people do seem to like a human face coming along with the paperwork and the announcement. And so if we can get like a few faces out, yes, I think most community folks appreciate just seeing, even if it's a junior level person, they just enjoy seeing a person making the announcement and being there to answer a couple questions.
Great, thank you. All right. Anything else? I think we are good. I'm just going back to check our agenda. Yes, we are good. So with that comes, that's the end of our meeting today. And it's actually on time. So that's also wonderful as well. So thank you, everyone, first of all, for the team at Hartford Public Schools for preparing the materials for today and doing the presentations. Thank you so much for all of your effort and hard work. Of course, to my colleagues, including Mr. Walker, as we spent this morning going through finance and audit items. And of course, all of you who are watching and engaged, we really appreciate it. So with that, have a wonderful day, and until next time, I wish you well. Thank you.